Hello. Sorry that I can't be with you today, but it's not going to be a big deal because I'm going to be able to give you information on what it is that your first speech and actually your second speech need to look like, how you need to put them together, that sort of information. What I want you to keep in mind while you're watching this is that you can stop it at any time, capture what you need to capture. I've shared some information with you along with the link to this video. I've also shared a sample outline and the deck that went along with this presentation. So you should have everything you need. Send me emails if you have any questions. Obviously, speeches start soon, so get those questions to me quickly. And if you need to set up an appointment, there may or may not be time between now and the next class, but you can always try. So without further ado, I would like to talk to you a little bit about informative speech. So I'm going to just give you this and start here with our speech. So informative speech, and this is what I talked about with you all. You're going to be doing informative speech first, and then you'll work on persuasive speech later. So one of the main things to keep in mind with informative speech is that you're teaching people. You're not telling us what to do. You're just telling us about something. And that's a good frame of mind to keep, working as you go through and put together what it is you want to talk about. So first of all, you need to have an introduction. And this is vital. So what do you do with an introduction? Well, an introduction is where you catch the attention of the audience, right? You give them an idea of what's going to happen, but you also just get them curious about what you're going to talk about. You want to relate this topic to the audience's experience. Or if it's something that they haven't experienced, relate to the idea that this is something they haven't experienced. You want to relate the importance of your topic. And as I list through these ways of catching people's attention, you do not have to do all of these at the same time. You want to do them you pick the ones that work for you, but just know that they're tools for you to use, ways to engage your audience. You want to startle the audience, but I really want you to be careful with this. I will just say that one time somebody started their speech and they just stood in front of everybody and then they went like this. But just imagine me screaming really loud. And we were all sort of, why did you do that? And ultimately, this person was talking about Darien Lake, the rides that were there, why everybody needed to go to Darien Lake. And she was talking about how she had ridden the Superman, and that's what it sounded like when she was on the ride. Okay, I think screaming at us probably wasn't the best way to get our attention. But I mean, right idea, wrong method. You can also arouse the curiosity and ask people something like, did you ever wonder why, blah, 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 blah? Well, today I'm going to tell you why that is. You can also ask a question. I want you to only use this as a last resort because it ends up becoming sort of this easy thing to do and say, does anybody here like chocolate? Of course, everybody likes chocolate. Well, not everybody likes chocolate, but I mean, so unless you really want to know the answer to the question you're asking, it's not the best way to start a speech. It's kind of flat. You can also begin with a quotation, and this can work in a number of different ways. If you're talking about a particular person, so you're going to share some biographical content on somebody, then it's good to use a quotation that they're famous for or not so famous for. You can also use a quotation to introduce an idea that gets people thinking and gets people primed for whatever topic you're going to cover. So those are some of the many ways that you can engage somebody. Finally, you can tell a story. And there are many, many ways that a story brings us in. You can talk about when you were, 4 years old and you first got your, your first scoop of Gannon's ice cream, for those of you who live in Syracuse, you know what I'm talking about. Or you could talk about Benjamin Franklin as a young person, or you could talk about Toni Morrison and the evolution of her writing and the story of when she first put pen to paper. All of these kinds of ideas are out there for you, and they can be introduced with a story or, related to all of these different ways of engaging us in what you plan to talk about. A little bit more about this. While you're doing this, catching our attention, you also want to make sure, excuse me, I'm going to adjust this a little bit. You also want to make sure that you're establishing goodwill. And this is not something that you can just say to yourself, I'm going to establish goodwill. But let me tell you how goodwill happens. We get the sense that you care about this topic. We get the sense that you've prepared. We get the sense that you're engaged and you actually are excited to be talking about this, or at least, have interest. All of that establishes goodwill. When you have this, then the audience, us, we're going to be more interested in listening to what you have to say. So just keep in the back of your mind that you need to be feeling good about this topic. You need to be feeling good about standing up. Well, have a positive attitude. Maybe you're not going to feel good standing up in front of us, but know that try to have as much positive energy as you can. You also need to establish credibility. And you establish credibility because we need to understand how believable you are. Are you pulling these things out of the proverbial left field, or do you actually know what you're saying? And that's something that's important in making us believe what you're talking about, in making us want to listen to more of what you have to say, so that we want to hear more about what it is that you're sharing with us. You can show your intelligence about something, the expertise that is surrounding this topic, and your general knowledge of the subject. So again, if you know a lot about a topic, this is where your competence comes through, because you tell us only the most important information. If you don't know a lot about a topic, then you need to think to yourself, what are the sort of the main pieces of information that I should share with people so that they'll have a really good understanding of what this is. Finally, you need to show your character. And so this is another sort of intangible part of public speaking, but something that you're going to develop over the course of the semester. We need to sort of feel that you're there with us. We need to feel a sense of sincerity, trustworthiness, concern for the well-being of either us or the world around us, that sort of thing. The more that you seem vested in your presentation, the more that your character, your goodwill comes through. And then the credibility comes through because you've prepared, you have information that you're going to share, and you're going to do that in an organized fashion. So all of those things are part of what you begin to build in your introduction. Finally, after you've sort of done this introduction where you're catching our attention in some way, and you're beginning that process of showing us that you're into this speech and you're talking to us about something that's important, you also need to then preview the speech for us. And I'll say that again, you need to preview this speech for us. So what does that mean? It means that you're going to share with us ahead of time the main points that you're going to cover. So if I was going to talk to everybody about how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and yes, unfortunately, this was a topic that was covered by a student. So now you do not need to cover this topic. Anyhow, how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. If I was going to go through all of this, I would say, you're up late at night and you're trying to figure out, you know, how can I get that extra hour and study for this bio test that I have tomorrow morning? I really need to get another hour in, but my energy is fading. Let me tell you, a surefire way of getting over that hump and just getting deeper into your studying and your work or whatever's ahead of you is by having a snack. And I would suggest a healthy snack. And I would go so far as to say that healthy snack should be a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So today I'm going to talk to you about how to make an excellent peanut butter and jelly sandwich that's going to get you that better grade on your bio test or whatever it is in front of you. We're going to talk about bread, we're going to talk about peanut butter, and we're going to talk about the types of jellies that you can have as well. So by the end of this speech, I'm hoping that you have a really strong idea of the right peanut butter and jelly sandwich that you're going to construct for yourself. All right, so there would be an introduction about a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. But the bottom line is you already know that I have three main things I'm going to talk about: bread. And so probably I'm going to talk about different types of bread. You know, I'm going to talk about peanut butter. So am I going to, you know, choices, healthy, natural peanut butter, Jif, Peter Pan, with nuts, no nuts, salt-free, salted, you know, there's all different options there. And then jams and jellies. Peanut butter goes with a lot of different flavors, but do you really like it with mint jelly? Probably not. You know, like, so you can talk about all these different jelly products and jam products that are out there too. And then obviously bread, same thing. So bottom line, you have this content, your energy is up there, you're engaged, it all works because you've introduced it ahead of time. So after the introduction comes the body of your speech. And this is the meat. Going back to a food analogy, this is the meat of your presentation. So you're going to develop main points to support your thesis. And remember, I said on the first day, you need to know what your thesis is. If you're sort of unsure what it is you're really talking about, step back and say, this is what I'm talking about. I know this is what I'm talking about. And then that way you can make sure that any information you share is actually relevant and cogent and does the best job supporting what you want to talk about. So what does that information include? It includes statistics, facts, personal experience, all that sort of thing. You want to use effective and relevant information. One thing to keep in mind, Wikipedia, no. Sorry about that. Now, if you want to go to Wikipedia, you can start there and then go to the bottom and see the source material that they're using. But there are plenty of other sources of information out there. There are newspapers. You do not need Wikipedia. It might be a good starting place for you, but it's not a source that I want you to use. So no Wikipedia. Another thing to remember as you're building your speech, you want to use transitions between your blocks of content. So if you think about your speech, it's like introduction, and then the next block is the first bit of information, and the next block is the second bit of information, and the third block, you know, so and so and so. You need to connect those blocks of information with transitions. So going back to my peanut butter and jelly analogy, if I just had finished talking about bread, I could say something like, so you see there are many bread options, and I'm sure that you'll make the best choice for yourself, but I know you're wondering what comes next, because you can't just have bread. You got to have, so that's kind of dry. You want to have something in there, right? And this is a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So the next thing I want to talk about is the different peanut butter choices that you have. And that was a transition. It moved from the idea of bread to the idea of peanut butter. And you can understand that once I got done talking about peanut butter, then I could start transition and talk about jellies. All right, so remember, transitions make a good speech great. So it's like, it's the added bonus that makes the biggest difference. And it really does add polish and finesse to whatever you're talking about. So take time to figure those out. You also want to maintain balance and order in the body of your speech. You have 5 to 7 minutes for this speech. So don't talk about your first topic for 4 minutes and leave the last, 2 minutes to cover the other 2 topics. So make sure that when you're practicing, you're like, okay, like 2 minutes for this, 2 minutes for this, 2 minutes for this, or even less, because you still got your introduction and your conclusion. So it's a balancing act, but you can figure it out. Just work ahead of time so that you know you're doing what you need to do. Want you to use vivid language, catch our attention, pull us in. You'll get more comfortable with this over the course of the semester, but you can hear when I'm talking to you, I don't use everyday language all of the time. I pull some things in there. I create analogies. So I use imagery, comparison and contrast, an analogy, repetition. I don't do this so much, but this can be used very effectively depending on what you're talking about. Also, you can have parallelism, which is this idea of creating a progression of ideas that are predictable because you keep following the same pattern in the way that you describe something. It's kind of like repetition, but it's fuller. So there's some ideas about ways that you can include language that's going to pull us in and make your speech more engaging. Conclusion. So you've gotten through your introduction, you've talked about your 3 main topics. Now you need to do a recap. You need to close this up for us so that we remember, boom, this is what they talked about, and man, do I remember. So you're going to refocus the audience. You're going to reinforce your thesis. You're going to conclude with something that the listeners will remember and upon which they can reflect. So it could be, again, a story, audience participation, a rhetorical question, a quotation, or whatever else you think might work. So again, peanut butter and jelly. Here's a conclusion that I am making up right now. But so now you have a really good idea of the choices that are out there when you are making that peanut butter and jelly sandwich. You've got bread choices, you have peanut butter options, you have a plethora of jelly versus jam options. So there's really no doubt that you can make the sandwich that's going to get that better grade for you on your bio test. We talked about bread, we talked about peanut butter, we talked about jelly. Now you go out and figure out what's for you and make sure it's in your cabinet. That was terrible, sorry. Make sure you have it on hand so that when you're stuck in the middle of the night trying to get through to that next block of time, you're ready. Something like that, right? I know you all will do much better. So now I'm just going to talk about these first 2 speeches. I think all of this information, it's pretty straightforward, but I want to go over some details with you so that you were very clear on what it is that's going on. This is an informative speech. It needs to be 5 to 7 minutes only. So in between that time frame, if it's under the time or over the time, I take points off. Sorry, it is the truth though. You need to have an outline that you submit to me. You upload it to Canvas, and you have to have note cards. I just want to be able to see them on the day that you present. I'm not going to collect them, but I do need to see them. On your outline, if you use sources for these first 2 speeches, I want you to note them. I am not requiring that you have sources these first 2 speeches because they're informative and sources aren't necessary. But if you do have sources, I would love to know what they are. So please include them at the end of your outline. And something to keep in mind, I do not care if you use APA or MLA or Chicago. as far as a format, I would just like you to be consistent with the format. Make sure that this speech is focused on one topic or an aspect of a topic, because you do not have time to be going all over the place. You just don't. So let's not be Arthurian legend. Make sure you do have vivid language, have a strong introduction and a strong conclusion. And on this, I'm going to be looking both times at your presentation style and whether or not you have controlled body movement, you have good volume, tone, effective energy level, eye contact, that sort of thing. Second set of speeches, you're actually going to get evaluated. So be keeping that in mind. You can record yourself standing there, giving your speech and seeing how you do. You can practice with people who are in your COVID bubble. It's up to you, but practice really does make a difference. So I'm going to stop sharing. And that is informative speech for you. Again, should you have any questions, you can email me and ask me. I'm going to end this recording and do all the process and get it up on Canvas in the next half hour. So it should be available to all of you. And I will be available tomorrow and Friday. I just don't know what the aftermath of the vaccine will be. And I also, as I said, the vaccine schedule is right in the middle of class. So I thought better that I get the vaccine than not. So I loved sharing this time with you, and I will see you soon.